little bit about the TRUE initiative, or the Real Urban Emissions Initiative, and sharing how we use real-world emissions data to help smarter transportation policies. So as Rachel mentioned, 10 years ago, Dieselgate scandal exposed that diesel cars in the US and the EU were emitting well above the emissions limits. ICCT researchers found that some vehicles showed up to 35 times higher NOx than the emissions limit. And this has a substantial air quality impact on particularly cities. And the recent study quantified it at the public health consequences at $1.2 trillion. So this kind of led to the founding of the TRUE initiative to measure vehicles and to see what they're actually emitting on the road. A TRUE study found that this problem among diesel vehicles was widespread across nearly all diesel manufacturers. And the TRUE initiative decided to work in cities to help clean up urban air pollution. And though Dieselgate was 10 years ago, today there's around 16 million vehicles that remain on the road in the EU and UK that show suspicious emissions. So even though the cars have gotten cleaner, a lot of these vehicles continue to operate on the road today. So the TRUE initiative is a partnership between the ICCT and FIA Foundation, and it was launched 8 years ago to help cities tackle urban air quality and to help promote climate policies and to help use independent real-world data about what cars are actually emitting on the road to help guide these policies to focus in on identifying and addressing the highest emitting vehicles. A lot of the early TRUE work was focused in Europe, particularly around this issue of diesel cars, with early work in London and Paris, particularly to help city policies like low emission zones. They were really aiming to clean up the dirtiest vehicles, to address this issue of high polluting diesel vehicles. Since then, TRUE has expanded to around 20 different cities, 5 different continents, including work here in the US, in Latin America, Jakarta, Kampala, and several other cities. So through this work, we've seen a couple trends emerge of policies and strategies that are that kind of occur across different regions. One of those being cleaning up high usage fleets. So these are vehicles that travel on average more miles per year, so that can be taxis or commercial vehicles. And this is a really important segment to focus on because they experience emissions deterioration. So since they're driving more miles each year, the emissions control systems degrade over time, which leads to higher emissions and more air pollution. They're also traveling more miles per year, so they contribute more to air pollution for that reason as well. So in Delhi, Gurugram, in India, the local policies incentivize compressed natural gas over diesel based on the assumption that it's a cleaner fuel, but it will lead to less air pollution. Testing that TRUE did revealed that these vehicles that are mostly powered by CNG actually show very high NOx emissions, around 2.4 to 5 times higher than passenger vehicles. This is among taxis and light good vehicles, so small commercial trucks. And they also emitted well above the emissions limit. So this real-world data helps evaluate this policy of CNG, prioritizing CNG and seeing how well it's working, and help providing evidence that it may not be the best policy for trying to address air pollution. In Mexico City, our study found that taxis were one of the highest emitting vehicle groups. And when we dug into the data a little bit more, we found that one model in particular was really driving this. And it was the Nissan Tsuru, which made up around 50% of the taxi fleet and emitted up to 10 times higher emissions compared to passenger vehicles on average. And this vehicle had already been begun to be phased out over time. It had been pulled off the markets due to safety concerns, but many of the vehicles still remain on the road. It was a very popular taxi choice. So the Mexico City government had already been investing in replacing these with newer vehicles, but this evidence really provides additional reason to replace these vehicles with newer, cleaner alternatives for the purpose of addressing urban air pollution. So for both of these, the kind of important strategies to accelerate electrification, and that can be done through scrappage and rebate programs, so offering the vehicle owners money to replace their older vehicles with newer, cleaner alternatives, or sales mandates or other mechanisms to increase electrification. Another common thing that we see is the need to improve inspection and maintenance. So our testing in Kampala revealed that over half of gasoline passenger cars showed levels of NOx emissions that were consistent with pre-Euro standards. So that indicates that their emission control systems are not operating, so they're either completely malfunctioning or removed entirely. There was also a lot of minibuses in particular that showed visible black smoke, which is an indication of black carbon emissions. And this is a pollutant that's not only very bad for health, but it is also a major climate pollutant. And the study quantified that minibuses, the black carbon emissions had 7 times the impact on climate compared to the CO2 emissions. So it's a very important pollutant to target for both climate and health reasons. And it's also very easy to identify because of the visible black smoke. But inspection and maintenance programs, local partners helped identify that one major issue was that mechanics are not necessarily trained or don't have the resources to operate on newer vehicles with more some of these emission control systems. So policies to address this or improve inspection and maintenance programs needed to really help address this gap. In Canada, where there's a very different vehicle fleet, where vehicles are comparatively newer and have the newest emission control systems, we still see some parallels where in Alberta we found that testing revealed that trucks showed widespread evidence of tampering or malfunctions of emission control systems. So around 38% of certain vehicle groups showed evidence of this, and this is widely known to be a problem amongst trucking groups and air quality groups that truck owners or fleet owners are disabling their emission control systems, which leads to very high levels of NOx emissions. And so currently Alberta does not have any inspection and maintenance program, so although that might not be a legal thing to do, it's also, there's no mechanism for enforcement. This paper, putting numbers to this, really helps support policies and support the work that local groups are doing to help implement an inspection and maintenance program. Our work in the US is often very focused around public health and equity. So recent work from a few years ago in New York City looked at the impact of diesel trucks on local air quality and found that people of color are disproportionately exposed to diesel particulate matter from diesel trucks. And that it's particularly concentrated around high traffic roadways and industrial areas. And this work has supported more recent policies and programs that New York has been working on to clean up freight emissions. And most recently with the policy that New York is working to implement called the indirect source rule, which really targets warehouses and pollution associated with warehouses. So all the trucks doing deliveries in often what are overburdened neighborhoods with high levels of air pollution, and to implement a policy to really help address this issue. In Seattle, we are about to release an analysis on drayage trucks and looking at the impact of drayage truck emissions on local communities. We're very fortunate to partner with the Wamish River Community Coalition, and we're excited to have Paulina, the executive director, speak later on our panel. And work there helped put some numbers to the issue of drayage truck emissions. And it had been known in the community that trucks are often idling outside of neighborhoods, outside of schools. And our analysis found that the neighborhoods with the highest level of idling had, on average, around 50% higher rates of premature death. So showing that this is a health equity issue and that cleaning up these trucks and moving to cleaner trucks is very important for the purpose of addressing this disparity. And there's work currently ongoing around electrifying drayage trucks. It's a segment that is a good target for electrification because they tend to travel shorter distances and particularly these trucks that are operating in the Duwamish Valley, which is an overburdened community, are a major target for electrification to help address the air quality issues. So with both of these, the strategy is kind of to focus on policies that address the emission hotspots or help reduce the emissions in the most polluted areas, and that can be done by targeting the ports or warehouses or other industrial areas. So these are some examples of how TRUE uses data to help support cities to implement policies improving air quality and helping meet climate goals. And that's done by two main strategies of one, cleaning up the vehicles that are already on the road today, so identifying the dirtiest vehicles and working to replace those with cleaner alternatives. And then the second being for the newer vehicles to really work to transition to zero emission fleets or transition to alternative forms of mobility. Some of the policy tools that I highlighted include inspection and maintenance programs, or indirect source rules, clean air zones, scrappage and rebate programs, and investment in zero emission transit are also tools, among others, that TRUE will highlight as solutions that cities can look to solve urban air quality issues. So I'll stop there, and yeah, looking forward to hearing from our panelists next.